No, I don't want to get inside. Hey guys, and welcome to another Ranger Rant episode. Of course, everyone knows I'm Marcher9234. Today I'll be discussing the Power Rangers s.p.d. episode titled Wormhole. Now this episode is very unique to fans and the Power Rangers s.p.d. series line. Now this episode didn't originally air during the s.p.d. TV run. What this episode was originally for was supposed to be a special DVD-only episode promoting the DVD sales, which is kind of ironic because Disney is notoriously bad when it comes to DVD releases. For example, when a series underperforms, they discontinue the series right away, which happens a lot with the Power Rangers volume sets because they'll simply just stop releasing the episodes and we won't get a complete season release at all. But in this case, this was supposed to be a DVD-only episode. It was not supposed to air originally when s.p.d. aired, but it does supposed to air a couple of episodes after history. Now this caused some various issues for other markets. Since this episode was supposed to be skipped, in America, this caused an airing mistake during several episodes of s.p.d. Episodes aired out of order. For example, the Asteroid episode that was supposed to come after this one aired several episodes before other episodes that were introducing other characters, which caused a lot of problems. Also, this episode accidentally aired in Canada by mistake when it was not supposed to, which caused Disney to give a high fine to the people who aired the episode by mistake. Now, this episode is actually not adapted from any Super Sentai episode. This is all original American made. However, the three monsters that are used in this episode are from various episodes that were not actually adapted, and some of the fight footage was actually stock footage from various episodes that we didn't use either. The episode begins basically with Grum doing his monologue, and he's talking to the Magnificence. At this point in time, we do know how he looks like. He basically looks like some weird brain in a jar with some alien tentacle eyes. And it wasn't really that much of a big reveal because it was like you expect something more powerful, more menacing that would be for Grum, but basically it's just some CGI creature inside a jar of some kind. So basically we see that Grum is talking to the Magnificence, and we're seeing he's kind of like upset that they can't defeat the s.p.d. Rangers. The Magnificence thinks that he's like giving up and saying that he's not that worthy, and of course the Magnificent torches him with electricity, but then they devise a plan, and we see the ship leave Earth's orbit and enter a wormhole. Back at the Delta Command base, we see that Cat detects this and of course says that Grum has left, and of course all the other Rangers are going crazy. Yeah, we won, we did this, blah blah blah, which I kind of thought was really ridiculous. The s.p.d. cast always seems to reset themselves, meaning basically that stuff that they learned in previous episodes gets erased and they start over basically being like cadets and stuff, being rookies and saying weird things that they shouldn't be saying. Of course, Kat basically explains what's going on. We see that Grum has entered a wormhole, and of course she specifically says it's a temporal wormhole, meaning time travel. And of course Doug Kruger basically says, well, we have to send some of the Rangers through the wormhole, but leave some of them over here basically to protect Earth, just in case if another alien force or Grum sets up a backup plan just in case while he's going through time. So basically Doggy Kruger sends Jack, Bridge, and Z into the wormhole, which I kind of find odd because normally in this case during a team-up episode they usually try to have the colors match up, meaning it should have been Sky, Jack, and Z in the episode, but they decided to use Bridge, I guess because he's more comical, and Sky would have been much more serious for Ethan, I guess. So while Doggy Kruger and the other Rangers prepare for the trip back through time, we see that Grum arrives at Reefside High basically in the year 2004. Now in the previous team up with the Dino Thunder team, that episode took place a couple of years later. This episode takes place during Dino Thunder. Now we don't know the exact position of where this episode takes place, but it has to take place after Trent and his clone were created and before Zeltrax was actually killed. Although I want to point out a slight mistake. Even though this episode is supposed to take place in 2004 and the cast members are supposed to look like themselves back in those episodes, the actor who plays Ethan actually cut his hair so it doesn't actually line up to what his appearance looked like back in the Dino Thunder series. So while we're back at Reefside High, we're basically seeing what the Dino Thunder Rangers always did during their school years. Basically Trent is drawing, Kira's doing her music, Ethan's being his geeky self, and Connor's being, the supporting jock and the leader of the team. And when we see the Grum's spaceship fly by, and everyone was totally confused, like what's going on, who was that? Now we flash back to the Delta Command base while we see see the other team members getting prepared to leave. The cool thing though about this episode, we finally acknowledge what time period that the S.p.d. takes place. In the previous episodes, we didn't know where they were taking place. So while Jack and the others are getting prepared inside the shuttle to enter the wormhole, we head back to the Dino Thunder timeline and we see that Rangers minus Dr. O are looking through the area near the school, seeing like if there's something up. And of course we see Zeltrax, of course, ambush the Rangers and doing his usual monologues, I'm going to attack you, where he gets actually sucked away from Grum. And of course the Rangers are totally confused what just happened. And of course Zeltrax is on Grum's ship while we see Morgana creating monsters in the background. Obviously, Grum uses his persuasive abilities to get Zeltrax to cooperate him, and of course tells Morgana to create more monsters rather than just having a single monster in order to deal with these other Rangers in the past and to make sure they actually conquer the planet this time. After the S.p.d. Rangers travel through the wormhole and they finally arrive on Earth, of course they finally met up with the Dino Thunder Rangers. And the S.p.d. Rangers, I do acknowledge that they remember them from the history episode, which is cool that they deal with the continuity, because normally PR doesn't like to deal with continuity. And of course, since Trent wasn't in the previous episode, they do finally say that, oh, you must be Trent. And of course, the Dino Thunder Rangers are totally confused with what's going on. And of course, Bridge finally explains to them, like, that they met before, that we traveled from the future, and of course, we erased their memory, which I do appreciate because they're basically explaining what's happened. And of course, we're giving the characters a reason why they know each other. However, the writers forgot one specific detail. Now, if everyone remembers, history took place 2 years after they graduated, meaning the end of Dino Thunder. But Wormhole takes place during Dino Thunder. That means, even though Bridge says that we erased your memory, didn't actually take place, because these are past versions of those Rangers that actually were in the future. Meaning, the S.p.d. Rangers actually never met these versions of the Dino Thunder team, so they wouldn't actually have those memories to begin with. So, Bridge's explanation, although good, is actually totally wrong. After the S.p.d. Rangers finally convince the Dino Thunder Rangers that they're actually real, they're from the future, they simply break out into groups in order to figure out where the Troupian energy is coming from. The Z goes with the other Dino Thunder Rangers, trying to scan the Rangers. And of course, Jack and Bridge break out into solo groups in order to figure out where they are. And of course, they're using their Delta Morphers scanning the area. Now, this is where they actually reuse stock footage. Now, this stock footage was actually never used in S.p.d. itself, so they're just using footage that was from earlier Deca Ranger episodes that didn't actually adapt. Jack and Bridge get ambushed by all the stupid minions and stuff, orange head, blue heads. I do like to point out the one thing. The orange head monster actually does reuse the Chrono Sabers that were used in Time Force. While Jack and Bridge are fighting off the Troupian minions, we head back to the future and to the Delta Command base, where we find that Kat found out that the wormhole is destabilizing and is going to collapse after around an hour. So Doggy Kruger is basically saying, well, I got to help them before they collapse and warn them that it's going to be collapsing. So of course Doggy Kruger is going to head toward him himself. Now of course the other three Rangers are saying, we got to go with you. And of course Doggy Kruger basically says, you can't go with me because if you go, no one's protecting Earth at this point in time. But of course Sky simply says, what's the point of us being here? If Earth is taken over in the past, this future is rewritten. Of course Doggy Kruger accepts this and decides to bring everyone else through the wormhole. Now, of course, after Jack and Bridge defeat all the Troupian minions and stuff, and they regroup with the Dino Thunder Rangers, we actually do see that they arrived in an area that's full of Troupian energy, and we get to see Zeltrax and, of course, Dr. O fight, as they would be fighting during the Dino Thunder season. Now, of course, this moment is really notorious with fans, mainly because the moment Tommy opens his mouth, we know that this isn't Jason David Frank. What happened was Trent, the actor who plays Trent, is actually voicing Jason David Frank. Now, originally when this episode aired, I thought Jason David Frank didn't want to be in this episode. I thought he was pulling some garbage where he was like, oh, I don't want to be in here. This is pointless. I shouldn't be here. I'm too busy working. But thanks to Power Morphicon 2, and fans had asked him, why weren't you in the S.p.d. Dino Thunder team up? He said, I didn't know about it. Meaning basically Disney was too cheap to simply ask and call JDF back to New Zealand to do this episode. But he did say that he would have done this episode if Disney had called him. So basically it was Disney's fault and not JDF himself's fault for not doing this episode. Now, of course, since all the Rangers are all together, they do their group morph. But I do like to point out that normally when the Dino Thunder Rangers morph, the main core team says Dino Thunder power up. However, Trent never said White Ranger Dino power. You don't hear his voiceover at all. So I assume basically Trent is saying Dino Thunder power up with the other Rangers. So while the fight basically begins, we see that the Rangers are fighting a huge horde of Crybots, blue heads, orange heads, and of course the three monsters that Mora had created earlier in the episode. And eventually, since they're basically outmatched, they're not really winning that much of a big of a fight. Fortunately enough, the other Rangers, and we see Dougie Kruger and of course Sky and the rest arrive on the scene. And of course the Rangers obviously break out into their usual color branching system that they usually do during team-ups. Now the first fight that begins is basically the girls. They're basically fighting the monster from Deca Ranger episode 39. Now originally in Deca Rangers, this monster was actually female. So that's the reason why the girls are fighting it. Though in this episode, a guy is voicing her. Now this happens a lot of times in Power Rangers and also in other anime shows, for example. I don't know why this happens, but they decide to change the gender for whatever reason. Either it's cheaper to find a guy's voice, but it does stick out because this character looks feminine rather than a man. Now, of course, Trent and Sam are teamed up because they're basically, Trent is considered the 6th Ranger for the Dino Thunder team, even though he's position 5. But I never liked it, though, because the 6th Rangers always get the weakest of the fight, because all they're basically fighting is Crybots, orange, and blue heads. And the next fight, of course, is with Dr. O and Dougie Kruger, because, of course, they're the mentors, the main leaders, so, of course, they're fighting together. They're fighting Zeltrax. During this fight, they can't actually finish off Zeltrax because that would be causing a time problem, because at this point in time, Zeltrax is still alive and not dead and transform into his later version in Dino Thunder. And of course, for the two Red Rangers are fighting a monster that was actually used in Deca Ranger number episode 37. As for Green and the Blue Rangers, now this monster, I'm not really sure where this monster came from. This monster actually isn't in ABBA Rangers or Deca Rangers. This monster could have been an amalgamation of various suits. They've done this in the past where they combine various different suits to make an original monster. But unfortunately, the Trubian minions and stuff are overwhelming them, and we finally get up to the most infamous moment for this episode. This bizarre, random ridiculousness of no one gets inside. Now, when I first heard this, I was laughing my ass off. This felt so random, it made no sense. Why would they be saying this? It felt extremely corny, and especially when everyone kept saying it for several times. It just felt so bizarre. The thing that made it even worse is when since Trent is voicing Dr. O, you basically hear his voice 2 times. But of course, since they rallied themselves up, of course the Rangers are fighting much more better and slowly defeat each of the monsters and the Crybots as they go along. As each monster is basically finished off, we get the obligatory, Battleizer team up, since, because Jack and, of course, Connor have the Battleizer formation. So, of course, they finish off the final monsters with their main finishers. I do like to point out, though, that when Jack is calling for Rick in order to do the Battleizer formation, he actually doesn't pull out his Delta Morpher from the back. If you notice, when he's pulling out his Delta Morpher, he actually slips and misses it. I also like to point out, though, is that when the Battleizers actually do defeat the monster, in the European or foreign versions of this episode, they don't actually see the monster get destroyed by the 2 weapons. What they do is they use the footage with the Battleizers in split screen, they slow the footage down, and then they simply cut to where they already blew the monster up, so we actually don't see them defeat the monster. I don't understand why Europe censors Power Rangers. I mean, the show is censored enough for American audiences. I don't understand how Europe and other countries think this is much more graphic. Of course, Grum is pissed off that they foiled my plans again, and the cool thing though is that Grum was willing to stay behind and still attack Earth, which is a good idea because Grum is from the future, he has more advanced technology, but the drawback is that he would have been trapped there. Now, and of course, Mora brings up a good point, and is saying you can take over Earth, but you would have to retake over all the planets that you've taken over before and during 2004 to 2025. Of course, at the end, we get the obligatory farewell between the 2 teams, and of course, just like history, the Dino Thunder Rangers have to erase their memories because they have to preserve the timeline. They can't know the existence of s.p.d. Although it's kind of weird that in s.p.d. they acknowledge this kind of rule for time travel, but in any other time they dealt with time travel in Power Rangers, they would never deal with this kind of issue. But the thing that kind of pisses everyone off again is that Dr. O is not with Trent and the other 3. Why is Dr. O not there? It makes absolutely no sense. Now, of course, after the Rangers get their memories erased, we're having these little funny moments with Kira saying, "Was that just a dog?" Now, of course, back in history, the Rangers said it was kind of depressing that they erased their memories and the s.p.d. Rangers feel like guilty of them doing that and they won't remember them. Now, of course, Doggy Kruger this time actually agrees and decides to erase everyone else's memory. I thought this was actually cool. It was a cool idea. It's like, yeah, it's not fair for the DT team to not remember the SPD team, so erase their memories. However, even though while it was being funny, it was stupid at the same time. It's like, okay, you can erase their memories, erase them after you get back to Earth, because it would be much more convincing rather than to erase the SPD team while they're on Earth still. It's like they were totally confused, like where are we and what? I thought that the scene was going to end where Kruger was still going to have his memory there and of course bring them back, but he erases himself, which was even more awkward. It's like, would you remember what you were doing right at this moment? It just felt really weird. Now, since they erased their memories, you think it was all well and good. Doggy Kruger didn't erase Sam and Rick. Now, of course, Sam is from the future, so he technically shouldn't get his memory erased, but I mean, it's kind of not fair. The other 6 have their memories erased. Why not Sam? And of course, yes, I know Rick is a dog, but he's a computer dog. He would still have memory of this encounter, so technically his memory should have been erased as well. Overall, I have to give the episode 4 out of 5. I mean, it was a really good team up. I mean, there's nothing really wrong with it. It was kind of unique because basically it had a break between history and Wormhole. We usually don't have 2-parter team ups. They're usually just single, really quick, and get them over with. So it was kind of cool that we had bring Trent and Dr. Owen to the story, except it did suck because JDF wasn't actually in the episode. What do you guys personally think? Do you think it was a decent team up because because we finally got all the Dino Thunder characters in one team up rather than having the only main team up? Or do you think it was really stupid because even though we got Trent in the episode, we didn't get JDF, and of course this episode was a DVD exclusive, so this episode eventually aired way after SPD was over, just before the premiering of Mystic Force, in fact. And of course, leave your comments below on what you think about this episode and future episodes that you'd like me to review. For next week's episode, I'll be reviewing Team Spirit from Power Rangers Samurai. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys right back here next week.